out and put it into podcast format
Mm.
and put it up on Audible. It's only available through Audible. So I finished the book last week. I listened to it when I'm driving back and forth to work or when I'm at
Right.
the gym. I listen to it there. So I finished the book and then I saw the podcast and I'm like, oh wow, I really want to check this out.
Hmm.
I have to tell you that that is so inspirational. The book was really good. The
Hmm.
podcast is 100 times better. It's a
Really?
hundred times better. It's just so inspirational. She sits down on the book tour. She was hosted by Tyler Perry, David
Hmm.
Letterman, Oprah, Ellen DeGeneres, Hoda from the Today Show,
Right. Oh my
Gail
God.
King. They all sat down with her
Hmm.
and discussed various aspects of the book. So when you and
Hmm.
I were talking a moment ago about giving away the book when we have a conversation,
Yeah.
honestly, I think not to put myself in the same bracket
Right.
as Michelle Obama, but I kind of think that's what happens. Like when you're
Yeah.
an author and you write a book, like you and I have, people want to talk to you about your book because let's face it, you can't say everything that happened
Right. That would be a
in the
long
book.
conversation.
Yeah, yeah. So she touched on various aspects of it, and it doesn't take much for me to cry. Like it doesn't really take a
Mm.
lot for me
Me
to conjure
either.
up some tears. Yeah, I'm very emotional, and so there were just lots of inspiring and
Mhm.
empowering moments in that whole podcast. That was like, oh wow, this is
Yeah,
amazing.
that is
So yeah,
pretty cool.
I've been recommending it to everybody that I talk to. So I'm like, if you need some inspiration or you need some
I think we
empowerment,
all do at
check
times.
out that podcast. Yeah. So, and it doesn't even really matter your political affiliation because
Well,
that's
no.
not what it's about. It's just a
Right.
podcast that's meant to make you feel better and help
Mhm.
you gather strength when maybe you don't have it. So,
Right. You said it's
yeah,
called The Light?
The Light, and it's an
Okay.
Audible exclusive. Yeah,
Nice.
when we get off of this conversation that you and I are having, I'm actually going to post the link to your book that we're
Oh,
going to talk
nice.
about today. And then I will
Okay.
also post the link for that podcast because it was just amazing.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
absolutely.
I'll put it in the comments down below. So,
Okay.
we'll give it a few minutes for a few more people to hop on. We're a little bit
Okay.
early, which you're a
Okay.
good influence on me because normally I'm a little bit late.
Oh,
So, having
I'll keep
you,
you honest when it comes to time.
yeah, I
I'm
appreciate
crazy
that.
punctual.
Yeah, I struggle with
That's okay. Well,
well,
how busy are you? I'm sitting here recovering from a surgery. I'm not very busy right now.
yeah, I just being punctual has never really been my forte. So, yeah, I don't know. So, how was your day? How are you doing? Everything going
Good,
good?
good. Went to therapy. Just putzing around,
Yeah.
enjoying the sun. It was nice today, I thought. So
Oh,
I
yeah,
sat
it's
outside for a
beautiful.
little bit, got a little bit of sun.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
it's beautiful out there.
yeah.
So, it looks like we've already got a few people watching, which is super exciting. You are good for me because
Oh,
I'm on time. We've got people on the show already. Like
really?
this is unprecedented. Yeah. Yeah. My
Nice.
my people are like me and they're always late. So you're a good influence. So I think it's three till. I think we can go ahead and get started. Are
Okay.
you good with that?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Well, welcome everyone to Let's Talk. I'm SL Cook, and with me today is Ella Louise. She is the author of Till Times Get Better. This is a bestseller. It has amazing reviews. You can get it on Amazon. Where else can they get this? Is it Amazon?
Barnes and Noble as well, and
Okay.
Balboa Books. That was
Okay,
the
perfect.
publisher.
Perfect. So I'll post the photo in the comments when we get off of the live stream, along with the links of where you can find it. And if you were kind of hanging out before we got started, I was talking about a podcast that I'm listening to, and not to turn anybody off with any kind of political affiliations or anything like that. I hate that we even have to kind of, put that disclaimer out there. But anyway, I find Michelle Obama to be very inspiring and empowering. I just think she's a very well put together woman. And she wrote a book, as many of you know. And I listened to the book on Audible because I don't have time usually to sit down and read a book, and I have bad eyesight. So I listen to books on Audible. And when I finished that book, I felt like I wanted more. Well, lucky for me, she did a podcast that's kind of a spinoff of that book. And I'm telling you, Ella and I were talking a little bit ago, and it's just incredibly inspiring. There's so much good in that. And you walk away from that just feeling like, that was the hug that my soul needed. So there's no political rhetoric in there. It's just somebody talking about from where her light comes. And so if you're looking for something that's a little bit uplifting, I would totally recommend it. So, okay, without any further ado, I'm going to stop gabbing and turn it over to Ella and let her tell you just a little brief synopsis of what her book is about. And we're going to talk a little bit about what inspired you to write that book and what kind of maybe what your writing process was. How did you get to the point of writing this book? So let's start with give us an overview of what the book is about. And I want to let everyone at home watching know that there is a chat. I can see your comments. So if you have a question, you want to interject something, by all means, send a message and I will relay those to our special guest and she can give you her answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Take it away.
Hello, everybody. This is my first time. I've got the jitters, needless to say. But yes, my book is my story. It's about my childhood and the abuse I endured as a child, without giving too much information about the book. It was pretty bad. Anyone that's endured stuff like that, especially as a child, those are supposed to be your best years of your life, the so beautiful, the rainbows and unicorns that everybody dreams of, right? But it was just so bad. And I was tossed around. I ended up in foster care. I was abused physically and sexually as a child. And, I just kept getting bounced around like an old rag doll. And I could never understand why nobody ever wanted me. And that's how I felt anyway as a child. But, in my teens, I went back home with my parents, the boing, boing, boing. I was here. And this one had me, it was all over the place. But I went back home and this beast of a father that I had was very abusive to me. It's just like he hated me. It was his mission in life to just prove to me how much he hated me. And not my sister. I mean, yeah, she got abused too. My mother too. We all got it. Everybody got it. But it was always so much worse with me. And then it led into the sexual abuse with him. And, he was just a narcissist, an raging alcoholic narcissist. And there was no escaping him. There was no escaping. So with the ways that he was, I wasn't a dumb girl. I thought pretty smart. And I learned how to get inside his head and how to work around him. So I started avoiding him as much as possible. By the time I hit 16, then I got a boyfriend. So I ended up running away from home because I just couldn't handle it anymore. The abuse was so bad. I feel like I'm giving away too much of the book, but he put a gun to my head. He put a gun to my head and he told me he was going to blow my brains out. My mother sat right there. She cried and she screamed and, the best she could, she assumed she did, I guess, but she didn't do anything to remove me from the situation. So I knew I had to do something myself. So at the age of 17, I left and I ran away to a whole nother country. I went to Mexico with my then boyfriend. So, just like the book says, till times get better. I'm not putting that on there, right? It's going the complete opposite direction.
Here we go. I can hold it up for you.
Anthem. He used to just always say, I'm going to beat you until times get better. Till times get better. So that day, I'll never forget it. I got on that plane and I thought, times just got better for me.
Yeah.
And now I was in control. And that was the most, invigorating feeling for me because I did it. I escaped on my own because I had nobody there to defend me, nobody to help me get out.
Yeah.
People knew what was going on, but nobody stepped up because he was such a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my story in a nutshell without giving away too much. It's got a lot
Sure.
of twists and turns in there, guys. If you just look at the reviews on Amazon, people were like, oh my God.
I'm
Just
telling you,
like, wow.
after reading your story, I was just so glad to know you,
Mm.
because what a strong person you are. And that is inspiring. It's How do you think that, in what ways do you see what you went through, the instances that you detail in the book, how has that made you the woman that you are today?
Very strong.
Yeah,
Very
which is
strong.
obvious. So
Yeah, you've seen the quotes on like every Pinterest post out there, strong because I had to be. I
yeah,
had to be because it was that, or what was my other option? Sit
yeah.
around and just wait for one day for him to kill me,
Mhm,
you know?
mhm.
So yeah, I attribute the pain and suffering I did at his hands, um, strength. He actually gave me the gift of strength that I needed to get out, the
Yeah,
determination to beat
yeah,
him at his own craziness, to his own madness.
right,
Yeah.
right. So at what point did you decide to write this book? How did you go from being the girl that we read about in this book
Mhm.
to the woman that you are today? What was that process, and how did you get to the title of author from there?
Well, after I escaped, me and my then boyfriend got married and started raising our little family. So I was just able to like sweep all of that under the rug,
Mm,
just sweep it, sweep it, sweep it. And just like it never happened. And
yeah.
we had to cover it up anyway. No one was to ever know. But in this part of my life, I just pretended like it never happened because
Mm.
I had another hat to wear now. I was becoming a mother. So I wanted to be like the June Cleavers of the world. I didn't wear pearls, but I tried to be the best I could, like
Yeah,
a June Cleaver, And
yeah.
I don't know, I'm getting a little off track.
No,
Um,
you're fine. You're fine.
But eventually, like years down the road, once my children started getting bigger, and as a mother, sometimes you just have these like epiphanies, and it's like, you'd be like, why did that happen? So you go back and you say, hey, mom, what happened here? And then they don't like to talk about it. It's like, oh,
Mm,
nothing. Oh, what are you talking about? That never happened. Oh, but yes, it did. I remember. So
mm,
one day, my mother slipped up and I was asking her questions. It was her and I alone, and we never were alone at any time. We were always surrounded by other people when
mm.
together. And so I got like under her skin, and I didn't even realize it, but she snapped. And I thought, ooh, what's going on with mom over here?
You hit a nerve. Yeah.
I hit a nerve,
Mhm,
the stuff she had been covering her entire life. So
mhm.
I had to leave it alone because we were recouping from our relationship as it was, right? From the childhood, the mother that
Yeah,
would stand up
yeah,
for me. Now she had turned it around. She was a good grandmother. She's starting to realize the importance of these true roles and how they're supposed to be played out. She
yeah.
had divorced him by the time I had children, my grandchildren. And it was a couple years after her and I had that conversation, and she got all just like, I'd never seen that in her in my life. And it's like, whoa, I struck that nerve. So a couple years down the road, my curiosity got the best of me and just got the best of me. And I knew she was hiding something, but she wouldn't tell me. And then
Mm,
one day, bam, when I least expected it, and on one of the worst days of my life, it hit me. And I didn't need it at that time, but it hit me, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. And you ever talk about having a Sybil moment? I had my
yeah,
Sybil moment.
yeah.
My whole world come crashing down
Mm,
when I found the discovery that the whole reason of this abuse from my end was due to a secret, a very well kept secret for many, many, many years. So I had
mhm,
curiosity, I had rage, I had hate,
mhm.
all of that stuff. It was just terrible. And it just was so terrible to carry it around. So
Mm-hmm.
instead of, carrying it around, I just tried to keep scratching for those answers. And, I ended up in a very dark spot more than once, many times throughout my life. But there's one thing I do want to touch on, and it's the forgiveness part. I know I mentioned it in the book. When I saw the huge mistakes I was making by being mad at the world, instead of helping myself and getting uh, relief for myself and love for myself, it was
Mm-hmm.
spilling over. This hate was spilling over into my children. And I didn't
Mm-hmm.
want that for them. Remember, I'm
Right.
trying to be June Cleaver here.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I knew I had to get it together because I didn't want my kids to live that kind of life.
Right.
My lives to this day are not perfect, but my kids truly didn't go through any of the stuff I did
Mm-hmm.
as a
Mm-hmm.
child. So, and then what encouraged me to write the book was after I got that devastating news. I'll just go ahead and say that this monster turned out not to be my father.
Uh,
So this is why he did all these hateful things to me, because he knew he wasn't my father. And so this is why. So, and as a matter of fact, I just started journaling like shortly after I got the news, and I'm trying to put all these pieces to the puzzle together. It's like, what the heck, what happened here and what happened here? And I'm trying to put it all together. And to this day, look, guys, this is my journal.
yep.
This
Yep.
is my journal. This is how it all started. I just started putting my thoughts, like my memories and my thoughts from like each phase of my life as they
Mm-hmm.
went. And I thought, I'm
Yeah.
just going to put this down on paper to see if I can maybe, I'm a very visual learner. So I thought,
Yeah.
on paper, maybe it'll make me realize what I'm doing
Yeah.
or make sense of it. So that's
Yeah.
how it all started. But I picked it up, I put it down, I picked it up, I put it down. I just didn't know how to write a book. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So then just one day I said, you know what? I'm not staying silent anymore.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
you've got people out there doing terrible things to other people and we're
Yes.
still protecting them? Hell no, not this
Yeah.
girl.
Exactly. How many
Mm.
times have you heard from somebody who's read your book that your story helped them, that your story
Oh,
opened and prompted healing in them? Or maybe they didn't even say that much. Maybe they just said, your story is very familiar to me. Have you heard that?
I want to say like 90% of the people that read it had some
Yeah.
kind of connection.
Yeah.
Because in my story, there are so many different things that you're like, I
Yes.
have something in common with this person, something in common with this
Yes.
person.
Yes.
It's just the back and forth. It was really
Right.
crazy to me because you don't ask people about their personal lives, right?
No. No.
So it's just amazing how you're working with a group of people, but you don't really know what you do have in common until
You know
they read the
it.
book and it's like they're like, "Oh, well, geez, yeah, I know exactly what this is." And it was so
Yeah.
relatable on so many levels. I had men telling me that they related. I had women telling me they related. People that had been adopted that they related. People
Yeah.
that had been in foster care, how they related. And it was
Right.
just, wow, it's just really crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I am a big advocate, obviously, for sharing your story and living in full disclosure because you never know who is going to hear you tell your story, who's going to pick up your book and read it,
Hmm.
who's going to fall across this live stream that we're doing, who's going to find the recorded video on YouTube or listen to the podcast episode and be like, oh my god, that's my story, or oh my god, that's somebody I love story. And that begins the healing process, because you said a moment ago how, when you tried to speak to your mother about it, she would shut it down and be like, no, no, that never happened. That whole gaslighting thing is so common where
Hmm.
abuse is involved. And my perspective of domestic violence, I was never abused as a child, thankfully. But I went through it with spousal abuse, with
Hmm.
partner abuse. abuse.
Mhm.
And so that's my perspective. So it's important for me to tell that story. And
Right.
as you know, and as I've shared with people before, my story doesn't necessarily count all the times that I was abused, all the times that he shot at me, all the times he threw me out the window, beat me in a parking lot. I don't, that's not the premise of my story. Of course, I tell those instances because it leads to the next phase, which was I didn't know how to live in peace. So when I
Mhm.
left him, I further perpetuated the abuse by making horrible decisions and
Right.
in turn abusing myself because I only knew that environment of chaos and
Right.
conflict. I was
Chaos, keyword.
uncomfortable. Yeah.
Mhm.
I was uncomfortable in the peace. And so it's important to hear that perspective of a survivor. It's
Mhm.
also important to hear your perspective, every perspective, honestly, but yours is a whole nother perspective because domestic abuse is child abuse. That is a
Mhm. It
form of
is.
domestic violence. And I think a lot of times we forget that.
Mhm.
And if you grow up in that environment of
Mhm.
being abused, you have a higher likelihood of continuing that for generations. You know, a lot
Yes.
of times you'll marry someone who's an abuser.
Yes, yes, I've heard that a lot,
So
yes.
right, right. So it just that whole I'm such a fan of and I'm sure you can relate to this. You know, here's the thing about being an author. When you write a book, people want to read it. And that's wonderful because that's the goal, right? Is to share your
True,
story.
true.
The issue is when people you know want to read your book and you've been
Mhm.
doing your best to keep these secrets in the closet, to keep them under the rug, to keep them under the bed in the corner, hiding out with the dust bunnies in your house. You don't want
Mhm.
people to know that
Right.
because there's an element of shame in that and there's an element of embarrassment in that. But listen, I'm here to tell you, and I just had an incident the other day, which is so funny because you and I had just had a phone conversation where we had touched on this, and then something very real happened in my life, not even 24 hours later. And I was forced to face head on a
Oh,
situation that required me to stand in my truth and to have full disclosure. And as much as it was painful and
mhm.
embarrassing, and if I'm honest, it pissed me off, but I still needed to own it.
Yeah,
And I still needed to share that story because I'm not the only one. I'm not
true,
the only one.
true.
And so that whole full disclosure, standing in your truth, it helps other people, but I'm here to
Yes.
tell you, it helps you as well. There, that
It
is
does, it
where
does.
the healing begins.
Right, because I don't have
So,
to, worry about what people I mean, it's out there, right? And
yes.
people like relatives, a lot of my relatives were like, "Oh my God, we always wondered what happened to you." Because
Yeah.
people knew, I mean, even as children, they weren't stupid. They knew that sometimes I lived with my mother and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes, yeah, I was just all over. So
Wow.
they were like, "Well, we never knew what happened to you." And I'm like, "Well, here it is.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not going to sugarcoat it anymore. This person is, never paid for what they did."
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but really, it wasn't out of a bad place in my heart that I did it. I did it
Mm.
because I wanted to be like, give someone else hope, strength.
Yes.
Maybe
Yes.
anyone that's watching this video or reads the book or just in general, if I can help one person get out of an abusive situation, then
Mhm.
everything I did was worth it.
That's right.
You
That's
know?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to sit down like this and let people see the real vulnerable you. So the other day, and I'm just gonna say what happened. So the other day, I have a son who's an addict and he's
Mhm.
currently incarcerated. Um, as he's locked up, the little girl that he was dealing with gets into his social media account, hacks his account basically,
Oh,
and
goodness.
posts screenshots of very unflattering conversations that he had had with other people.
Mhm.
Um, there were just really desperate kinds of things he was doing to obtain his next high.
Yeah.
So she, of course, posted these things on his social media to kind of call him out and embarrass him. And in doing so, she blocked me, his brothers, my sister, his aunt. She blocked all of us so we couldn't see it. and probably have it brought down, let's be
Yeah.
honest, that was. But so anyway, my phone and my social media messengers were pinging all day long.
Oh,
Stacey, did you see this?
goodness.
Did you see this? Did you see this? Oh my God, did you see what's on your son's wall? And blah 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 blah. Like it just kept coming, and nobody was coming at me in a way to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. It was more like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that this is happening.
Right.
I reported it, and all of that. So it was all done with the best of intent,
Hmm.
but it didn't keep me from feeling like total crap all day long.
Yeah.
So I get home that night and I'm speaking to my significant other and I'm telling him, what happened.
Hmm.
And I'm like, I don't even know how I want to deal with this. And he said, okay, remember last week we had this conversation because I had done an interview. I'm sponsoring an event and I don't want to give that away because it's not my story to tell, but I'm sponsoring an event and I did an interview as a part of that. And in that interview, I was kind of sharing a little, like you just did, a brief synopsis of my story.
Yeah.
And I showed him the video when it was all said and done. And he was like, praising me like he always does. He's my biggest cheerleader. Him and my mom, my biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah.
So he said, you look great. You did great. I can't believe you did that unscripted. Like that was phenomenal. He said,
Hmm.
but I want to warn you that, or caution you, or just remind you that the people that you're talking to, the people that you're trying to reach are in a really dark place right now. And you know what that feels like. So always be mindful of that. Because one of the things I said was, I'm a diva. And I was talking about how I came, my event celebrating survival, which is how you
Hmm.
and I met,
All right.
how that
Yeah.
to be. And I'm like, I'm a birthday diva. My birthday is in November. I call it the 30 days of Stacy and blah, 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 blah. Like I was definitely
Yeah.
my extra persona was on full display. And
Uh-huh.
he's like, I know you and I know that you're not uppity and hoity-toity, but somebody who's going through something dark might see that and feel like, ugh. And so I started thinking about it and I'm like, he's exactly right. Because I
Uh-huh.
used to work at a domestic violence shelter and I worked there in the thick of my abuse with my husband.
Oh,
So
goodness.
can you imagine how awkward that was? And
Yes.
we the staff at the DV shelter, we used to go to, I'm originally from Ohio. So our trainings for this would be in Columbus, which is the capital of Ohio. And so we would be down at, they called it 2 days in May, which is when they did their big training. And we'd be sitting in these meetings and these training sessions, and women would take the stage who were survivors of all these different things, you
Uh-huh.
know, domestic abuse, spousal abuse. They had been raped,
Hmm.
molested, you name it, and it happened to them. And here they are standing on this stage, presenting in this healed state and sharing their story, but looking like they've never seen a bad day in their life. So I'm sitting there looking at them in their stylish clothes and their perfectly coiffed hair and their
Uh-huh.
jewelry, and they're accessorized, and
Yeah.
they just look like they got their stuff together. And
Right.
I'm sitting in the audience feeling like I can barely put one foot in front of another because my entire soul is tired. And they're
Hmm.
up there sharing their story of survival and how they got from here to there, and how everything is just so much better now, and in telling me you can do it. You know what I mean? You
Hmm.
can do this, you
Yeah.
can get through it, and giving me pointers on how to encourage other people. And
Right.
all I could think was, wow, must be nice, because I really don't see that I'm ever going to be at that point. I was so
Right.
sick in my storm that I could not believe that I would ever get to the point where I too could be standing on a stage telling somebody my story and telling
Hmm.
them, I know it seems impossible, but I promise you, you're going to get to the other side. And I think the
Yes.
reason that happens is because we leave out the things that are still happening. Because even though I'm healed in some areas and
Hmm.
healing in others, my life is an evolution. And there are
Yeah.
still parts of my life that are very much a mess.
Yeah.
Some days
True.
I don't know if I'm coming or going. I don't know if it's up or down, left or right. I'm a big mess sometimes,
I
you
get it.
know?
I
So
get
yeah.
it. I
And
still
I
go
so
through it too. I do.
yeah. Yeah. So I think that we have to stay in this state of vulnerability and continue to build this community of survivors and
Hmm.
continue to tell our stories, because there are so many people out there that are touched in various ways by various
Hmm.
parts of our stories,
Right,
by a
right.
part of my story. Somebody could read your book, read my book, and read three other books of survivors and be able to
Exactly.
relate to something in all of those books.
Exactly. Exactly.
And that's why this full disclosure and vulnerability and sharing your story is so important.
Yeah,
So important.
very important.
Yeah. So I just felt like I needed to say that. You and I had just had that
I
conversation.
know.
And I promise you, not even 24 hours later, I'm like, okay, I see you, big guy. I know what you're doing.
Right. I hear you. I'm watching.
Yeah, put
Save
your
the
money where your
lightning
mouth
bolts for something else.
is. Right, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Was there anything else that you want to share?
Um, I was just gonna tell you thank you personally because when I found a local author in my area that
Yeah,
wrote a book on the same topic, domestic abuse,
yeah.
I was just like, no way, shut the front door.
I thought the
No.
same
And then
thing.
I
Yes.
go to your event and I'm like, oh my God. And it's like, I
Yeah,
want to help. I want to do something. And it made me realize, you know, I still work, but I still want to help with something because
yeah,
I'm over the book. This is done now, right? So,
yeah,
and I've never been the kind of person to just sit on my hands. I've always got to have something going on in my life.
yeah.
So I
Same,
just feel like
same.
this is my time to shine, to help others and get the word out. You
Yeah.
know, and the only thing I did decide today, because I was in foster care, I
Uh-huh.
want to also reach out in that area to children because children, you just wouldn't believe, well, you would believe it. You would believe it. You're very educated. You've been around enough. You've seen enough. You worked at domestic violence.
Yeah, yeah.
But it's children don't deserve what they're being handed.
No.
So my heart has always been in it for the children too. So I
Mhm.
want to see what I can do in that area as well. But yeah, I
I love
mean,
that. I
yeah,
love that.
yeah.
Yeah. You
There's a
are
sorry.
you are such an no, it's okay. I have to say this. You're such an incredible woman, and to only know you in such a limited capacity and for such a short period of time. I talk about my front row a lot, and
Ooh,
you had
ooh,
taken
ooh,
a
ooh.
seat.
I'm front
Yes,
row, guys. This is
you
front
she is.
row.
She
Stacy's
is
front
100%.
row. Okay.
She is, really. And I just want you to know that I am in the probably not the first seat, but I would be there if somebody would give it to me. I'm in your front row too.
Oh,
So
you're my front row,
I
definitely.
appreciate you so much. I really do. We're
Same here.
we're planning Celebrating Survival. There are two events happening this year. There's one in Lake Worth, and you've been sending people my direction, vendors and just reaching out and saying, what can we do? How can I help? What's
Yes.
going on? What do you need? And I love and appreciate you so much for that.
Oh,
There's
thank you.
such a
Same.
sisterhood here. And Shannon said, yes, we need to save our children. Absolutely, we do.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, we do.
Because
Yep,
if we don't save them now, we've got to save them later once they're adults.
that's right. If we give them the skills now, then we
Yeah.
can stop. I mean, the thing is, guys, this is an epidemic, and it's probably as much of a pandemic as Corona ever was, but
Hmm.
we're not as comfortable talking about it.
Yeah.
And I want these conversations that we're having, I want us to sit down and have these more often so that we can find a cure, so to speak, and bring it into the light and talk about it and
Yeah.
find a resolution for it. I've never been a fan of just talking a problem to death. If we've got a problem, let's find a
Hmm.
solution. And
Right.
the solution is education,
True. Very true.
awareness.
Education and
Yeah.
lots of love.
Yes.
Love for
Yes.
others. Love for self and love for others.
Absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's the old saying, unless you walk a mile in someone's shoes, you have no idea. You
That's
just don't.
right. That's right.
So,
and we never know what someone is going through. We have all these
Don't.
inspirational memes and posters that we see through our social media feeds. And, I know for me, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, oh gosh, here we go again. Somebody's trying to be a
True.
philosopher. But it's so true. It's so true.
People
Like,
give them a like and they keep scrolling, and that's the extent of it. See,
yeah,
that doesn't
yeah,
really help anybody by giving them a like. We have to give them a hand,
yeah,
like a real
yeah.
hand.
That's right.
So
That's right. Well, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on. Let's talk. And
thanks for
this is
having
the
me.
most successful episode we've ever had. I want you to know
Yay!
I have never in my life doing this, which it's only been 4 episodes, but I'm a little dramatic. I've never had someone leave a comment in the middle of the show. So thank you, Shannon, for doing that.
Thank you,
I
Shannon.
Yeah, there are some little emojis in reaction to what we've been discussing. That's never happened before either. So
Wow.
I'm
A lot of
pretty
firsts today.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Look out, Kelly and whoever she's with now. It used to be Regis and Kathy Lee, but we might be coming for their spot, girl. I don't know.
Oh, I don't know. You're the one. You're the one I would put my eyes on. All right, sweetheart.
And my mom just hopped in and said, "Love you." I love you too, mom.
Oh, how
That's awesome.
sweet.
Very cool. I have such a good mom. I really do. I'm so blessed.
That's good. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
All
All
righty.
right. It was so good to talk to you. Thank you again for hopping
Thank
on and
you.
making this an
Thanks for
amazing
having me.
episode. Absolutely.
All
All
right.
right. We'll see you guys in 2 weeks. All
Okay.
right. Have a good night.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.